Well, Utah escapes Lawrence with a 31-21 win over Kansas, but Utah is not getting an at-large bid to the college football playoff. I don't know that there's any amount of chaos that can do it at this point. Welcome into the Open for Business Big 12 podcast, best Big 12 podcast on planet Earth. I am your host, John Kurtz. Please like and subscribe. So, look, here's the deal. Utah won the game 31-21, but gave up almost 300 yards rushing to Kansas after giving up 470-plus rushing yards last week to K-State. Not sure what is going on there. Utah would have lost this game if not for just one of the worst red zone performances you will ever see out of an offense, which is what Kansas did today. Utah did survive. It was a cold, dreary day, and Utah won to keep its playoff and Big 12 championship hopes on life support, but they are totally on life support right now. The situation, and we'll get to it a little bit more later on, is in front of you in terms of playoff at large. I don't really see the path right now. You'll need so many things to go your way. And even then, this feels like another performance, fair or not, that would push Utah even further back in the pecking order for a playoff bid. And why I say fair or not is because I think the reality is, just like Utah got punished a spot last week for the K-State game, they will likely get punished a spot or so in the committee's mind this week. You have SEC teams that will go play like, for instance, Florida, who was not very good this year, and they will get much more benefit of the doubt for having a sluggish win there. Or if it's a mid-tier Big Ten team, right? Like somebody struggles with Minnesota, Big Ten teams that have big brand names, they will get more benefit of the doubt than what is going to be afforded to Utah because KU and K-State play in the Big 12. Like, we've seen how the Big 12 is treated. We've seen the fact that BYU is still out of the field right now with a resume that just objectively, blind resume test, as we saw from David Ubben, national reporter, should be in. So the Big 12 is graded on a curve here. I think Utah is going to be graded on a curve. And there are a couple games that you could sit around and think about if you're really trying to get at-largy here. First of all, you would not want Texas to beat Texas A&M. I would be thinking about that game if I were a Utah fan. You do not want Michigan to beat Ohio State. You would need Miami for sure to lose to Pitt. I guess you want Oregon to lose to Washington, but Oregon's probably in anyway. You would want Oklahoma to lose to LSU. You'll need Vandy, I think, to lose to Tennessee because Vandy could definitely jump you, and then you're going to need Alabama to lose to Auburn. So, you basically need like all of those games, I think, to go your way if you're Utah and you want to secure an at-large spot at this point. So the path really becomes Big 12 championship game, which now gets confusing because it means if you're a Utah fan, you got to be rooting for BYU. That's the path here. It can't be a BYU loss. It needs to be BYU winning, and then it needs to be Texas Tech losing. All right, so then you start to get into tiebreaker scenarios with Texas Tech involved. So Texas Tech has to lose, and Arizona State would have to win. That is what needs to happen. Now, Arizona State beating Arizona, that game feels very much like a toss-up. Like, that is something that absolutely could happen. Texas Tech losing to West Virginia would be a massive upset. They are 3+ score favorites in that game, over 3 touchdown favorites. So Texas Tech losing does not seem very likely. The line now is up to 23.5, by the way, if you are keeping track there. So, I guess in some ways you could say, well, John, maybe it didn't matter all that much that Utah was this sluggish in the win over Kansas because it was just going to take probably a miraculous Texas Tech loss anyway to get the stars to align to pop Utah back into the Big 12 championship game, which, by the way, if that were to happen, becomes a holy war rematch in the Big 12 championship game, which would be crazy. That would be wild. And that's a game I think Utah would probably be like, look, we lost by 3 on the road. We got a shot. But it's not very likely to happen. And, Utah, I was going to say, would only have itself to blame. Really, not making the playoff, they do. They only have themselves to blame. They lost 2 games, one at home where they got popped pretty good by Texas Tech with a backup quarterback. And frankly, BYU controlled them. Late touchdown made it look closer in Provo, but BYU controlled them in that game. So they do. But there just has not been enough chaos over the last 3 weeks once they had lost 2 games to really get vaulted above. And no matter how we can harp on what the hell happened to the run defense and why Did Utah just feel like they were sleepwalking through both of those games for a very long time against KU and K-State? But it probably in the end won't matter much. It probably was not very consequential. Had they continued to beat everybody in the Big 12 that they beat by 27 plus, I don't think it was really going to matter much. I mean, I think it would have still been basically the same outcome. So we can sit here and say, hey, the only reason that Utah won this game is because Jaylen Daniels in the red zone today threw a pick six. He threw an interception in the end zone. He threw another interception, and then Kansas missed a field goal. And you could sit here and say, if it's not for like a historically bad red zone performance from Kansas, Utah's probably losing that game. And that is probably true. I would also say Utah deserves some credit for making the plays that they did in the red zone, though some of them, I mean, particularly the interception in the end zone, just a really bad play by Jaylen Daniels. Looks like he's basically trying to throw the ball away, and he just floats it into the back of the end zone to be intercepted. So some of it, just Kansas mistakes. Jaylen Daniels, before throwing the pick six, had a read option play where if he just keeps it, he's trotting into the end zone for a touchdown, but he gave it, and they didn't score, obviously, and then, flips on him, a 14-point turnaround. So some help for sure from Kansas. And it's a bitter end for Jaylen Daniels, who's had a wonderful career at Kansas, should not be remembered this way. He's a guy that was playing during the pandemic season in 2020, was thrown to the Wolves as a 17-year-old by Les Miles in, what was just a dumpster fire of a program at that point. Stuck around, took Kansas to new heights, made them respectable, and stuck it out even the last couple of years when I'm sure he had opportunities to go elsewhere. So he deserves a much better legacy than what Kansas fans are going to remember from today. And so, in that respect, tough end to see for a guy who, in today's day and age with all the portal stuff, he's been loyal. He stayed with Kansas, and he stayed through a remarkable turnaround job by Lance Leipold. But now, I mean, Kansas fans, I get it. Back-to-back years with no bowls, they're going to be frustrated. And Lance Leipold has built the program up to where there are these expectations where people are frustrated, and that's a credit to him. But Kansas fans probably should be pretty upset after this one. This is another one that they, how many games the last 2 years has it felt like Kansas has had in its grasp and just not been able to finish? You think about the Arizona game earlier this year and the fourth down call that I know still haunts Lance Leipold because he has mentioned that. So, yeah, and then Utah, you got to wonder, was that the last that we just saw of Kyle Whittingham, at least in a regular season game? Does he just have one game left, whatever the bowl game is going to be for Utah? Remember the tearing up that happened at the press conference after the K-State game, and Josh Furlong from KSL speculated, hey, I feel like that's probably it, and that's probably what a lot of the tears are from, that he's sitting around thinking, well, I just coached my last game at Rice-Eccles, and it was just such an emotional comeback win, and the way the game played out and all of that certainly factored in too. But anyway, it's kind of my read on where things are at after the early window here on Friday. If you are a Utah fan, once again, your scenario, you want to root for Texas Tech to lose tomorrow at 11 a.m. to West Virginia. That's the key to it all. But if you're thinking about tonight, you need Arizona State to beat Arizona. If it's Arizona who wins and the Wildcats are slight favorites by 2.5, then that dream is dead anyway. And that's probably going to be it for the playoff opportunities, because otherwise you need to be rooting for Texas A&M. You need to be rooting for Pitt. I guess root for Washington. Definitely root for LSU. Root for Tennessee. Root for Auburn. That's kind of your list. Stanford, but boy, you might want to pray on that one. That's kind of your list if you're a Utah fan and you're trying to figure out where to go from here as far as your rooting interests go. So Utah wins 31-21 despite giving up 290 yards on the ground to Kansas, and they will finish the regular season 10-2. We're all focused on the playoff resume. Let me just say this. Where Utah was the last 2 years, and as impatient as fan bases are these days, sticking with Kyle Whittingham and him getting it turned around with a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback to a 10-2 season this year, kudos to Utah and Mark Harlan and everybody involved there for engineering that turnaround job and having the patience to stick with a guy who's been your dude for a long time. So especially when you have a head coach in waiting already, didn't seem like there was any pressure to push anybody out. They let Kyle Whittingham get it done. So congrats to Utah on the win. Congrats on a phenomenal season, whether or not it results in a playoff berth. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com, or click the link in the description of this video. I will talk to you very soon. Take care.